We are deeply disappointed with the behavior today. They broke our property. There's a lot of litter lying outside now.
But our constitution makes provisions for separate development, and that's how communities such as these exist, and that's why it has been welcomed over the years. Are you not perhaps using your rights to infringe on the rights of others?
No, that's a lazy argument, and we feel like as the EFF there is a deliberate ignorance and lack of decisiveness amongst our leaders.
President Zuma referred to the Afrikaner as the white tribe of Africa. We're Africans. I'm very proud to be an African. We live on African soil. I was born on African soil. I want to die on African soil. We're part of this continent. We're part of this country.
Because there is even a court order, by the way, that rules against this settlement of these white people that are here. If that was you, my sister, in any piece of land, even if it's 15 square meters, your house or your shack was going to be demolished. There's nothing special about white people. We want their houses to be demolished. We want to see what we've seen for ages being done to black people.
The Zulu culture, you cannot reduce that beautiful and rich culture to black.
No single white property has been demolished in the same argument that they've been using against us. If they're not going to demolish these houses, let them pay back the money of black people.
Could a non-Afrikaner, non-white, could they live here?
Of course they could live here, but they would not feel welcome here, right? We can't refuse. We're in South Africa, but
Guys, so just on the follow-up on the last video I made, the EFF now has actually marched again on another, Afrikaner society or Afrikaner settlement, which has been called an Afrikaner or white Afrikaner only settlement in Kleinfontein. And I'm actually just learning about it for the first time. And the EFF has actually marched on this settlement, arguing that, there's a court ruling against the existence of the settlement. And so the settlement, should either be demolished or probably money should be paid to the houses of the black people, or probably those who actually are supposedly the owners of those lands to be paid the money by these settlers, so to speak, in Kleinfontein. And so it actually got a little bit violent, not necessarily violent per se, but the rep actually argues that, there was a lot of, littering on the street and their property, that he was really disappointed with the EFF, as you can see in the video here. The journalist actually trying to explain, but, that there were police, walking around, and police actually stayed in front of the gate. They asked the reps of the Kleinfontein not to come out. And also they themselves, I think the EFF the EFF protesters and the journalists were not able to get into the settlement. And so police was there to make sure that the EFF honored the time that was actually given for this protest, because I think the EFF stipulated a certain time limit, probably 1 hour, 2 hours, I'm not yet sure, but there was a time limit given for this protest to take place. And you can see a lot of EFF youth, these are the youth of the EFF, I think it's part of the EFF student command, in front of Kleinfontein, arguing about what they say it's the existence of a white-only community on a land that had been zoned by the municipality as agricultural land. And so they argue that, a lot of their students who actually have graduated from agricultural sciences and all of that are unable to have pieces of land to practice what they have been taught in school and all of that. And so they actually allude the existence of Kleinfontein, towards economic exclusion. And this is the basis for their argument. And so it's a lot of really sensitive issue, this whole issues with white only settlements in South Africa. As I've been saying, this would actually spell the future of South Africa, and we need wisdom and tact to be able to talk about these topics. I've actually asked you guys if you can reach out. I really want to speak about if I can speak to the likes of Chris Pappas. I think he's one person who has grown through the ranks in leadership on the youth, a young person in South Africa who has grown through the ranks of leadership and born and really represented represents, you know, the essence of what it means to be white and African, because I think that's the difficulty that is unable to be ratified by maybe many blacks in South Africa who are not able to really understand, you know, that these Afrikaners, for example, can be African. I think this is a really big struggle, all right? And even when you listen to the rep, you know, the rep in, from Kleinfontein, he actually argues, and this is one really interesting part of this video, you guys have to watch till the end. He actually argues that even Jacob Zuma recognizes the presence of whites in South Africa, and he actually called them white Africans. The guy was actually saying that he's proud to be African, that he doesn't have any other land, that he wants to live in Africa, and that he wants to be buried in Africa. You know, he sees himself as part of that soil. But, you know, if we have a portion of society that is unable to reconcile the existence or the possibility of an existence of a white-skinned person who can be African at the same time, then there has to be really academic, critical discussions on that. And probably this is actually why I really want this kind of podcast with many of the whites who have grown and lived in South Africa. If you can get me in touch with Chris Pappas, I think it will really be interesting. But before we go into this video, I want us to really listen to this journalist, how she foregrounds the existence of Kleinfontein, all right, arguing that, you know, I think in the constitution, it actually still stipulates that there are people groups in South Africa who have the right for separate development, a term that takes me back to, I don't know if it was that for Wood or something, but anyway, let's quickly listen to how she describes Kleinfontein.
We also want to speak to the Kleinfontein leaders who are here inside, and obviously we had organized to do interviews with them, but to avoid tensions, police told them not to come out. We can't go in, so that makes it a bit difficult, but we're hoping nevertheless they will give us a chance to speak to them, perhaps in a few. They did indicate that they are willing to speak to the SABC. They're just waiting for the crowd to subside because they would not want to fuel tensions. You'd understand a matter such as this has the potential to, you know, blow up in any direction as racial tensions are high. Earlier we saw an incident that happened, but it was quickly obviously dealt with by the police, who quickly intervened, and it's one of the examples that the leaders made, that the tensions are high. It would not be wise for them to come out this side. It would also not be wise to speak to the media while the crowd remains. So we're hoping to find out how are they going to respond to some of the calls that this place should be shut down. Kleinfontein, it's an Afrikaner-only community that they believe this is not illegal, it's not discrimination. It has to do with upholding their right to separate development, as they believe any other ethnic group in South Africa has the right, and this enshrined in the country's constitution. But of course the political parties are saying this should not exist in a democratic state, in particular not 3 decades after democracy.
Yeah. So you heard it for yourselves, guys, and you know, part of the arguments of the EFF actually, you know, in really specifics, they actually argue, like I mentioned earlier, I think Kleinfontein seems to be a portal through which they want to demand accountability from the government. All right, they argue that the MK party has actually visited this settlement previously, and I'll be making a video after this on that. That the MK party has visited, and there's actually a court ruling against Kleinfontein, actually designating it as illegal. The journalist argues that, you know, Kleinfontein reps have actually been trying their best to legalize their settlement, but to no avail in South Africa. The youth of the EFF argue that, you know, the existence of Kleinfontein is vandalism, criminal activity, and it's injustice to the South African youth because it actually, you know, is situated on land that should be designated for agriculture, and that students from the universities that have graduated from agricultural sciences should be able to practice what they have learned on that land, all right? So they actually allude that to economic exclusion. They actually also slammed the government for not demolishing the houses of the white people, because since the land has been zoned as agricultural communities, yet there are white people who have actually established settlements, that the municipality is slow to demolish that and give the land to the rightful owners because it has been designated as agriculture. Let's just quickly listen to the EFF rep quickly, just really capture, so that we can really have an open mind and let's have an open mind to just listen to the arguments here, because it's really important that we have an open mind on how we understand what the EFF is saying, and if they're trying to use Kleinfontein to demand accountability from the government.
As the EFF Youth Command in Gauteng, we view this as vandalism, as a criminal activity, as an injustice to the youth of South Africa, black in particular. Just a year ago, we were protesting with more than 2,000 young people who are graduates of agriculture across universities in this province. And you would know that more than 150,000 graduates of agriculture in this country are without placement to any plantation, to any jobs, are without jobs. So with this high rate of unemployment in this country, we have people who are misusing land that should be used for agricultural purposes, that should be aiding the unemployment in this country.
You're talking about an injustice, people who are abusing land, but our constitution makes provisions for separate development, and that's how communities such as these exist, and that's why it has been welcomed over the years. Are you not perhaps using your rights to infringe on the rights of others?
No, that's a lazy argument, and we feel like as the EFF there is a deliberate ignorance and lack of decisiveness amongst our leaders in government. When we as young people back in Johannesburg and across municipalities in this country back in 2017 said no, there's a serious rate of landlessness amongst students in the country. We went and wanted to occupy land. We said that the municipalities must expropriate land that is not used. They must expropriate the buildings that have turned into slums and convert them into student accommodation. We were told that that land is for special zoning, it's offices. If it's not offices, it should be used for retail purposes and all sorts of arguments. But now when it's white people doing that, there is nothing being done to them. They are not told about special zoning. When black people go and occupy land back in the southern farms and say they want to we like to use land for residential purposes, their infrastructures get demolished by red ants and all sorts of criminals. But when white people are doing that, their infrastructure is not demolished. So as the EFF, we want to see justice, we want to experience the so-called equality that is in this country. We want to see the democracy that we speak about.
But this was not a land grab. It is private property. It was donated to this community, and yes, it's not registered as it was declared illegal by the High Court, but ultimately it was not a land grab.
Another lazy argument. Like I said to you, this land is specially zoned, been zoned for agricultural purposes. I'll make an argument that the EFF, as law-abiding citizens, we follow processes, and you would know that we had declared that we want to build a school that is going to be free from grade R up until grade 12. That school has not been built as yet because the municipality is telling us that there is special zoning. We cannot use that particular piece of land for our purposes of building a school. But when it's white people that come and occupy the land, whether it's private or not, even that farm that the EFF bought, it's ours, it belongs to the EFF, but the municipality still has the right to dictate over any individual that this land should be used, whether for residential purposes or as business, for business use and so forth. So no one is above the law.
So moving forward, as the young people in the EFF, what are you planning to do to make sure that perhaps your agenda, your mandate or objective that you'd like to see is realized? Do you have perhaps a concrete plan in terms of what to do moving forward?
Well, you see it being implemented now. We're already using our political influence. We are already influencing municipalities. We have already written formally to the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure and Land Reform and to the Office of the Premier that this land must not be, granted it must not be let loose and allow white people to use it as a residential area, whereas the municipality has already zoned it under agricultural use. So as the EFF, we've already used our political influence, and furthermore we want to follow up with the municipality and the provincial government as to are they implementing, because there is even a court order, by the way, that rules against this settlement of these white people that are here. If that was you, my sister, in any piece of land, even if it's 15 square meters, your house or your shack was going to be demolished. There's nothing special about white people. We want their houses to be demolished. We want to see what we've seen for ages being done to black people. Some of them don't even build shacks, by the way, don't erect shacks. Some of them will go and build houses in property that they have communally purchased and wanted to use it for residential purposes. How many of them have been demolished? No single white property has been demolished in the same argument that they've been using against us. If they're not going to demolish these houses, let them pay back the money of black people. Let them pay back all the money of the people that have built in those land that they've demolished. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. So you heard from the EFF now, and quite an intense one. The argument actually, in a way, if it goes to court, I really don't. I think I'll do some research into that court ruling that actually probably designated this Kleinfontein settlement as illegal. I'd really like to understand, the ramifications for that. But anyway, the Kleinfontein rep. But anyway, the Kleinfontein rep was actually also interviewed, and he actually says that they are deeply disappointed with the actions of the EFF. That they really want to speak with the EFF and really come to an understanding on how people can actually live differently and develop differently and separately. All right. He actually argues that she actually had some really interesting questions to him about if a non-Afrikaner can live in Kleinfontein. She actually asks interesting questions about if there are blacks living in Kleinfontein. She argues about how the EFF actually thinks that Kleinfontein is an just really interesting interview anyway, and I think it's really be interesting that those who consume this video hear from Kleinfontein and how they articulate the challenges against the existence of their settlement in South Africa, because this has a lot of ramifications for the future. And if we don't start talking about it now, bro, it will blow up at some point, as we are seeing that it seems that this is sparking some kind of violence. And what comes to my mind about this kind of clash between the youth in South Africa and, this kind of probably settlement takes me back to the Soweto uprising of 1976. And really, I think we really need wisdom now in how we talk about this sensitive issue. Let's quickly watch this Kleinfontein rep articulate how he understands the existence of this settlement, and share your thoughts in the comments.
Mr. Khanes, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, it was an unusual day, I think, for many of the citizens, the residents of Kleinfontein, the Red Berets that came to protest at your gates. It's been busy, a lot of police, but I know you're also unhappy about the state of affairs, the dirt outside following the crowd that gathered here. But I want to get into how do you respond to some of the calls, in particular the call that this place has to be shut down?
Yeah, we are deeply disappointed with the behavior today. They broke our property. There's a lot of litter lying outside now. But we are very grateful, firstly, to our Heavenly Father for the fact that today was relatively peaceful. And also we want to thank the authorities, South African police, that were here, and for the professional manner in which they have also dealt with their services and duties today. We are very appreciative of that. Patricia, it's unnecessary that one must confront each other in this manner. Last week there was a small delegation of EFF members that visited Kleinfontein. They were here at the gate. They promised us that they will make an appointment to come and speak to us. We actually agreed with them, and also we sent the EFF a letter in which we invited them to speak to us, because we prefer dialogue. We prefer that we engage with each other in a mature manner, and that we engage with each other with a purpose of trying to understand each other. A lot of slurs were hurled towards Kleinfontein that, for example, they are welcome to come and work here, their parents work here, sweat here, but they're not entitled to stay here. which is not true. Kleinfontein as a cultural society do our own work. It's our own people that work in the gardens, it's our own people that work in the houses, the construction is done by our own people. It's Afrikaners that do everything. And that's a false pretense that was posed to the people here, that we reach back to the old slavery or to the old apartheid. It's not that. This is a cultural community. We do our own dirty work and we clean our own trash. It's not like it used to be, and that's the important difference. We believe that culture is rich, it's beautiful, it's deep. The Zulu culture, you cannot reduce that beautiful and rich culture to black. And the same with the Afrikaner culture. We're a people, we're a folk that came into existence on the soil of Africa. President Zuma referred to the Afrikaner as the white tribe of Africa. We're Africans. I'm very proud to be an African. We live on African soil. I was born on African soil. I want to die on African soil. We're part of this continent. We're part of this country. And it's important for us that there is respect and constructive engagement, that we learn from each other, that we work towards a positive future, and that we do not have this type of confrontational and aggressive. There was lots of aggression, like you pointed out. I mean, they tried to break through the gates. Fortunately, the police wasn't able to stop them. That is not the right way in which people should engage with each other.
Many are wondering, what's the main requirement for someone, a South African, to live in Kleinfontein?
As I mentioned, we're a cultural community. We want people from our culture to live together, because culture, if you do not foster it, is very frail. It's a candle that can be blown out by the wind.
But culture is broad. I want you to break it down. What's the main? If I had to come and knock on your door and I say I want a house here, what would be the requirements that I would have to meet in order for me to get a house here?
100%. So we want people from the Afrikaner culture to come and live here. And I know that you say it's broad, but culture is broad, right? Christian, Afrikaans, religious, respectful of our ways, respectful of our days, respectful of the way that we live, respectful of cleanliness, respectful of respecting other people's property. So if you look outside, that's not what we see here, Patricia. And that's the unfortunate bit. There's much more to culture.
Could a non-Afrikaner, non-white, could they live here?
Of course they could live here, but they would not feel welcome here, right? We can't refuse. We're in South Africa. But we can, in terms of our own constitution, we can build our own. And they refer to section 235, that's this lost section of the constitution. That's not true. If you read the whole constitution, you will find a lot of gems that speak to each other. Also section 31, for example, brilliant, beautiful, where a cultural community can exist and foster itself. And that's what we want to achieve. And again, that stems from an agreement that was a 1994 agreement when South Africa was on a powder keg and on the verge of blowing up. The Afrikaners, the Boer people, and the then government, the old NP government, and the ANC sat down with America and Britain as witnesses. And we spoke to each other, we said, let's prevent a war in this country. And that agreement was reached and concluded and signed between those parties. So the government of today, the government of then, agreed that the Afrikaner can
separately develop.
Yes. Well, it's let's be careful. Not separately develop. We can ascribe, we can dream about self-determination, and there's many forms of self-determination. I heard the accusations being thrown at us that we want a separatist state. That's not true.
Are there black people who live in here?
No, no. None have applied. Nee? But what's important is, if you look at South Tyrol in Italy, the Basques, the Catalonians, the Flemish people in Belgium, if you look at that, the world is filled with minority groups that have, in terms of UN conventions, the right to look and to cherish self-determination. And there's many forms of beautiful self-determination that is not separatist in nature, and those are the ones that we ascribe to.
Thank you so much.